do you guys have a plan for dealing with the day that the government might say, that's it, no more grog sponsorship of sport?
Well, we're obviously interested in how this issue plays out, and we'll adapt to that circumstance as it goes. So I guess the critical thing for us is, as we've talked about, you know, we all need more money, and the reality is we're all not-for-profit organisations that when we generate proceeds, they're invested back into the game. They're invested either back into grassroots or invested back into facilities to develop good players or to develop facilities for spectators. And I think that's something that's often overlooked. And so from our perspective, generating funds is important, and we'll adapt to the legislation of the day if it comes to that. But hopefully it won't, because the alcoholic beverages industry is a great source of sponsorship, and they have always been great supporters of our sport and other sports.
John, have you heard any whispers that the jig might come to an end at some stage?
No, quite to the contrary. When we went, we were all summoned to a meeting with the Prime Minister down in Melbourne to talk about the problem of binge drinking amongst the youth of Australia. The Prime Minister made it very clear there was no intention to ban alcohol advertising. It was also clear from that meeting, if there'd been a misrepresentation in the media that binge drinking was a problem solely related to sport, that was corrected. There is a societal issue around binge drinking, and to the extent that sport can be part of the solution, we've all agreed to be part of that solution. But the fact is we're coping with a game that has at the top end elite athletes, professional athletes, right down to grassroots. And we want role models, we want ambassadors. We spend a lot of education. Tony Dempsey's here today from the Players Association, educating the players about the problems with performance-enhancing drugs, illicit drugs, gambling, and too much alcohol. And I think sport touches a lot of people in Australia, and to the extent that we can help the government send out those messages, we can do so. But I think the banning of alcohol advertising would be extremely detrimental to the finances of sport.
Now, it's very hard for me to know who to speak to next, because there's not a sport here which hasn't had at some point one of its players drink too much and embarrass the sport. I'll go to you, Gil, for no particular reason and ask you whether or not...
Have you been following me around?
I knew I'd get in trouble one way or the other. Whether or not there's an awareness in your sport, and I'm happy for anybody else to chip in, each time somebody from sport goes out and makes a fool of themselves on the grog, do you guys think, my God, it's going to be harder and harder for us to make the case that sports sponsorship from grog is okay? Are people linking that sort of incident to the broader funding issue we set up a minute ago?
No, I don't think there's a link there. I mean, I think what we acknowledge is that all of our players have a responsibility, whether they like it or not, and most of them don't, that they have, I guess, are held to a higher standard than most people in society, certainly of their age. And what we would encourage the players to do is to really take responsibility for their actions. And we put the best processes and procedures we can in place. We educate them to the extent we can. I think people understand in the end that these are 18 to 28-year-old kids who actually, and if you look at them compared to their peers, are behaving very well. That is a different issue, I think, from alcohol sponsorship in sport, and I don't think there's a link. I guess with respect to alcohol sponsorship in sport, we would say that we're very well positioned to partner with alcohol companies and others to actually sell the right message about responsible drinking. We think that actually that it provides a platform to help the government with what they're doing and actually sell that message and do it through all of our clubs and players and the networks we have, actually to sell the right message. I don't think that banning alcohol sponsorship would aid that in any way.
Okay, I'm going to move on to the idea of growing the game, because everybody who runs a sport wants to grow their sport and wants their sport to have more players and more spectators. There's lots of different ways you can measure it. I'm going to go across the table and ask, I suppose, from right to left. James, I'll start with you. When people talk about growing the game in your sport, what are the benchmarks, what are the measures you guys regard as important growth?
Well, I think for us it really comes down to, in the top of the pyramid, I suppose, is interest in the game, and that is measured in all sorts of ways, but participation is a very important part of that. We've got about 580,000 formal participants in the game. It's a great base for us to develop our sport, I guess, as a commercial proposition. That sort of participation generates great public interest, which means people watch it on TV, so television ratings are another aspect of it. television ratings are obviously then a source of revenue through the television companies, and so sponsorship is another factor. So really public interest is the key thing, and participation, television ratings and other forms of consumption of the game are really the key things for us.
So, John, when you were running a bank, you only had one number to deliver on, right? It was the bank either made a profit or it didn't. Tell us in rugby, what's the closest thing you've got to a bottom line?
Well, in banking, as long as it was in the black, you were happy, but for those balmy days. Look, sport's like a pyramid. At the top, you've got the elite end, and the base is clearly the participation base. For rugby's purposes, keeping the sport all in the one envelope is vital, so that the top end of the game doesn't get disconnected with the participation base. Cricket's done it very well with backyard to baggy green. The connection between backyard cricket and the Australian cricket players. We do it with I want to be a Wallaby. So any kid who gets recruited at the under 6s, 7s wants to be a Wallaby. The more successful you are at the top end, the more you drive recruitment. It's just an inevitable connection. If the cricket team loses a few or the Wallabies lose a few, oh well, you know, the feel-good factor is not what it should be. But it's a constant reinvestment. You just can't take anything for granted, because you can see from what we've got here today, this is one of the most competitive sports markets in the world. It's the only country in the world with 4 football codes. So the hearts and minds competition is as hotly contested as it possibly can be. But it's important to keep the entire sport in the one envelope.
David, do you have a benchmark that you favour most? Was it kids playing, kids joining clubs, people going to matches? What do you look for first?
Yeah, growth, as James and John have said, comes at a number of levels for all of us. I've always liked that John Paul Getty comment on how to be successful. You've only got to do 3 things: get up early, work hard and find oil. And oil for all of us is 7-year-old kids getting involved in your sport, either going on to being players or developing an interest as fans. And we're all active in primary schools with development officers every day, exposing kids to our games. But at the same time, at the elite end of the game, we need to be paying our players a salary which makes our sport attractive for elite athletes. We need to make sure our competition's exciting. So we implement mechanisms like salary caps and drafts to make sure that fans stay interested. We have a close competition, provide a spectacle that fans want to go to. Crowds, TV ratings, sponsorship, all of those are the measures at that end of the game.
Gil, I'm trying to get somebody to distinguish cause from effect and say which one really matters. Like, which outcome do you really want? Do you want millions of kids playing or millions of people watching? I know you want both, but is there one you want first?
I don't think so. Well, maybe kids playing, because we believe that we've got to build the base first, and that's why we invest so much money in what we call game development, which is getting people playing the game. And so we spend a lot of money investing in facilities, development programs and others, because these guys then build the base for us, and they ultimately become supporters of our code. And that, whether they watch it on television, they go to games, play the games, invest in the product. So I guess if we had to name a metric, it'd be, I guess, participation, and we're very proud of a sort of 600,000 people playing our game. But really, you have to, as I think these guys have alluded to, it's really the strength of our brand that we look to, and there's a number of measures of that, whether it's revenue, attendances, ratings, participants, and we really have to make sure we've got a link from the top level to the bottom, and that's what we aim to do. And if we can do that and get people playing at the bottom, at the grassroots, and coming through where they're elite athletes or supporting elite football, the rest takes care of itself, in our view.